"Mom, I know what you did with my fiancé last night." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. My mother Sandra's face went white as a sheet, her mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. Brent, my fiancé of 4 years, just stood there frozen, his eyes wide with absolute terror. The kind of terror you only see when someone's darkest secret has just been dragged into the light. "Abby, sweetheart, I don't know what you're talking about," my mother stammered, her hands shaking as she reached for me. But I stepped back. I couldn't let her touch me. Not after what I'd seen. Brent finally found his voice. "Baby, whatever you think happened, don't." I held up my hand, surprised by how calm I sounded. "Just don't." But here's what neither of them knew. I wasn't there to cry. I wasn't there to scream. I wasn't there to cancel the wedding. I was there to let them know that everything was going according to plan. My plan. See, I'd discovered their little secret 3 days ago. And instead of falling apart like they probably expected, I'd spent every waking moment planning something that would make this the most unforgettable wedding in our small town's history. Something that would ensure neither of them would ever forget the consequences of what they'd done. If you're enjoying this story of betrayal and revenge, make sure to subscribe, because you're not going to want to miss how this all plays out. Trust me. What I did at that altar will shock you. But let me ask you this before we continue. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted completely? Someone who was supposed to protect you? Let me know in the comments, because what I'm about to tell you will show you exactly what happens when you push the wrong person too far. So let me take you back to the beginning. Let me tell you how I got here. And more importantly, let me tell you what I did next. Because my mother and Brent had no idea that their perfect little secret was about to become the most public humiliation of their lives. This is my story. And it starts with a girl who thought she knew everything about love, trust, and family. My name is Abby Miles, and I'm 26 years old. I teach 3rd grade at Millbrook Elementary here in our little town of Cedar Falls, population 8,500. You know, the type of place where everyone knows everyone, where your business becomes the whole town's business before you even realize it yourself. I've always been the girl who believed in fairy tales. The girl who had her wedding planned in her head since she was 7 years old. White dress, church ceremony, reception at the community center with mason jar centerpieces and string lights. Simple, classic, perfect. That's all I ever wanted. And I had the perfect relationship with my mother to match. Sandra Martinez, 48 years old, divorced when I was 12. After my dad left us for his secretary, it became just me and Mom against the world. We weren't just mother and daughter, we were best friends. She knew everything about me, and I thought I knew everything about her. Every Friday night was girls' night. We'd order Chinese takeout, watch romantic comedies, and talk about everything. My students, her job at the bank, our dreams, our fears. She was the first person I called when something good happened, and the shoulder I cried on when life got tough. I trusted my mother completely, more than anyone else in the world. She was my confidant, my advisor, my biggest supporter. When other girls my age were rebelling against their parents, I was planning weekend trips with mine. That's just who we were. And then I met Brent. It was December 2019, finals week of my senior year in college. I was stressed out of my mind, surviving on coffee and determination, when I walked into this little coffee shop called The Daily Grind. I ordered my usual, large coffee, 2 sugars, splash of cream, and when I reached for my wallet, I realized I'd left it in my dorm room. "I've got it," said this deep voice behind me. I turned around, and there he was. Brent Coleman. 6'2", sandy brown hair, these incredible blue eyes, and the kindest smile I'd ever seen. He was wearing a flannel shirt and work boots, clearly not a college student. "You don't have to do that," I said, but he was already handing the barista a $5 bill. "Consider it my good deed for the day," he said with a grin. "Besides, you look like you're about to fall over. When's the last time you ate something that wasn't caffeine?" That's how our first conversation started. He was 24, worked construction with his dad's company, and had this way of making me laugh even when I was drowning in stress. We talked for 2 hours in that coffee shop, and I completely forgot about my American literature final. He asked for my number and I gave it to him without hesitation. Something about Brent just felt safe. Solid. Real. Our first date was dinner at Romano's, the only decent Italian place in town. He picked me up right on time, opened car doors, pulled out my chair. Old-fashioned gentleman, just like my mom always said I deserved. But here's the thing that really sealed it for me. He wanted to meet my mother. On our third date, he said, "Abby, you talk about your mom constantly. She's clearly important to you. I'd like to meet her." Most guys my age were trying to avoid meeting parents. Brett was asking for it, so I brought him home for Sunday dinner. I was nervous as hell, but I shouldn't have been. Within 10 minutes, Brent and my mom were talking like old friends. He complimented her cooking, asked about her job, and genuinely seemed interested in her stories. "He's perfect," she whispered to me while we were doing dishes. "Don't let this one go." Her approval meant everything to me. Everything. My mother's opinion was the only one that mattered, and she loved Brent from day one. The next 4 years were like a dream. Brent would come over for family dinners every Sunday. He'd bring flowers for both of us, roses for me, daisies for Mom, because they were her favorite. He'd help her with household repairs, shovel her driveway in winter, and always remembered her birthday. "You're so lucky," she'd tell me. "He treats you like a princess, and me like family. That's rare, sweetheart." When I graduated college, Brent was there cheering louder than anyone. When I got my teaching job, he took me and Mom out to celebrate. When I had rough days with difficult students, he'd show up with ice cream and listen to me vent for hours. He was everything I'd ever wanted in a partner. Stable, kind, hardworking, and devoted. He loved my mother, and she adored him. It was perfect. Last Christmas morning, after we'd opened presents at Mom's house like we did it every year, Brent got down on one knee in her living room. The ring was exactly what I'd dreamed of. Simple, elegant, not too flashy. Very me. "Abby Martinez," he said, his voice shaking with emotion, "you've made me the happiest man alive. Will you marry me?" I was crying before I even said yes, and when I looked over at my mother, she was crying too. "I'm so happy for you both," she said, hugging us tight. "This is what you deserve, baby girl. This is your fairy tale." That night, Mom and I stayed up until 3 in the morning planning the wedding. We had our notebooks out, Pinterest boards open, talking about flowers and dresses and colors. It was everything I'd ever dreamed of. "This is going to be the perfect wedding," she said. "Our wedding. We're going to plan every detail together." And we did. For the next 8 months, wedding planning became our new Friday night activity. We'd spread everything out on her dining room table. Venue brochures, cake samples, fabric swatches. It was the most fun I'd ever had, planning the biggest day of my life with my best friend. But somewhere in those 8 months, something started to shift. Little things at first. Things I should have noticed. Brent started staying late at my mom's house to help with wedding prep. Which seemed sweet at first. He was being involved, caring about the details. But sometimes I'd get there and find them just sitting on the couch talking, no wedding stuff in sight. "We were just taking a break," Mom would explain. "Planning is exhausting." They developed these weird inside jokes. References I didn't understand, shared looks across the room. When I'd ask what was so funny, they'd just say, "You had to be there." But you know what really should have been my first red flag? I found Brent's watch in my mother's bedroom. I was helping her fold laundry one afternoon, and there it was on her nightstand. The watch I'd given him for his birthday. When I asked about it, she barely looked up from the shirts she was folding. "Oh, he took it off when he was fixing my bathroom sink. Must have forgotten it." Reasonable explanation. I chose to believe it. Then there were the conversations. Mom would mention things about Brent that I'd never told her. His favorite beer? The fact that he hated mushrooms. How he liked his coffee in the morning. "How did you know that?" I'd ask. "Sweetheart, I've been around him for 4 years. I pay attention." Again, reasonable. Again, I chose to believe it. The final straw was the bachelor and bachelorette parties. I wanted to do something simple, dinner with my girlfriends, maybe some dancing. Mom suggested we book the party room at Romano's, the same place where Brent and I had our first date. That's so sweet, I said. Very sentimental. A week later, I found out Brent's bachelor party was at the same venue, same night, same time. It's just a coincidence, Mom said when I mentioned it. There aren't that many options in Cedar Falls. But it felt weird. Why would they book the same place for the same night? When I asked Brent about it, he just shrugged. Tyler probably talked to your mom about it. You know how these things go. Looking back now, I realize how naive I was. How desperately I wanted to believe that the two people I loved most in the world would never betray me. How I explained away every single warning sign because the alternative was too horrible to consider. But sometimes, the truth has a way of forcing itself into the light. And 3 days before my wedding, I discovered that everything I thought I knew about love, trust, and family was a lie. The night that changed everything started out perfect. My bachelorette party was everything I'd dreamed of. Intimate dinner with my closest friends at Romano's, the same restaurant where Brent and I had our first date. We laughed, we cried happy tears, and for the first time in months, I felt completely relaxed about the wedding. But around midnight, this crushing migraine hit me like a freight train. You know the kind, where the lights feel like daggers and every sound is amplified. My maid of honor Ashley wanted to take me home, but I insisted she stay and enjoy the party. I'll just grab an Uber, I said, already calling for a ride. Don't let me ruin your night. The Uber dropped me off at my apartment at 12:45 a.m. I was fumbling for my keys when I realized I'd left my phone charger at my mom's house. My phone was at 12%, and I had a million things to coordinate the next day before the wedding. So I got in my car and drove 10 minutes to Mom's house. I figured I'd just grab the charger and head straight home to sleep off this headache. That's when I saw it. Brent's truck, parked in my mother's driveway at 1 a.m. My first thought was that something was wrong. Maybe there was a wedding emergency. Maybe someone had gotten hurt. I parked behind his truck and hurried toward the house, my heart pounding with worry. The living room light was on. I could see movement through the sheer curtains. I was about to knock when something made me stop. Something made me look. And that's when my entire world crumbled. Through the window, I saw my mother and my fiancé on the couch. But they weren't planning a wedding surprise. They weren't dealing with an emergency, they were kissing. Not a friendly peck. Not a congratulatory hug. They were kissing like lovers. My mother's hands were in Brent's hair. His hands were on her face. They were looking at each other the way he used to look at me. The way I thought he still looked at me. I stood there in the darkness, watching the two people I loved most in the world betray me in the most intimate way possible. I watched my mother, my best friend, my confidant, the woman who raised me to believe in true love, run her fingers down my fiancé's chest. I watched Brent, the man I was supposed to marry in 18 hours, whisper something that made my mother laugh. That soft, flirtatious laugh I'd only heard her use with men she was dating. How long has this been going on? How long had they been lying to my face? How many family dinners had I sat through, completely oblivious to the fact that my fiancé was sleeping with my mother? I stumbled back to my car, my hands shaking so badly I could barely get the key in the ignition. I drove to the 24-hour McDonald's parking lot and just sat there in the darkness, my mind racing. I should have marched in there. I should have screamed. I should have demanded explanations. But I couldn't move, I couldn't think. I couldn't even cry. For 4 hours I sat in that parking lot, watching the sun come up on what was supposed to be my wedding day. And somewhere between 3 a.m. and dawn, something shifted inside me. I wasn't going to be the victim in this story. I wasn't going to be the naive girl who got betrayed and broke down. I was going to be the woman who got even. By 5 a.m., I had a plan. The first call I made was to David Richardson, our wedding photographer. David and I had been friends since elementary school, and I knew he'd do anything for me. Abby, it's 5 in the morning. Is everything okay? David, I need you to do something for me, and I need you to not ask questions until after the wedding. Okay. What do you need? I need you to set up hidden cameras at the ceremony venue. I need every angle covered. I need audio, and I need you to live stream it to Facebook. Abby, what's going on? Just trust me. Can you do it? Of course I can do it, but no buts, just do it. I'll explain everything tonight. Next, I called Brent's parents. I woke them up at 5:30 a.m. Mrs. Coleman, it's Abby. I'm so sorry to call this early, but I need you and Mr. Coleman to sit in the front row today, right behind my mother. Of course, sweetheart. Is everything all right? Everything's perfect. Just make sure you're recording, okay? You're going to want to capture this moment. Then I called my Aunt Carol, my mother's sister. Carol had never liked Brent, though she'd never said why. Now I am beginning to understand. Carol, it's Abby. I need you to come to the wedding today. Honey, you know I wouldn't miss it for the world. I need you to sit close to Mom, front row if possible. And Carol, bring your camera. This is going to be one for the family albums. If you're wondering how this revenge plan unfolds, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because what happens next is going to leave you speechless. Trust me, you've never seen a wedding drama like this. But I want to know, if you discovered your partner was cheating with your own parents, what would you do? Would you call off the wedding? Or would you go through with it and make them pay? Let me know in the comments, because I'm curious if you would have handled this the same way I did. By 7 a.m., I was back home, writing 2 versions of my wedding vows. The first set was the sweet, romantic vows I'd written months ago. The ones Brent was expecting to hear. The ones that talked about love, trust, and forever. The second set was the truth. Every single detail of what I'd witnessed, every lie they'd told me, every moment of betrayal I'd been too blind to see. I called Ashley, my maid of honor, and Tyler, Brent's best man. I couldn't tell them everything, not yet, but I needed them on my side. Ashley, I need you to help me with something today. Of course. What's wrong? You sound weird. I need you to make sure I get to the altar. No matter what anyone says, no matter what happens, I need to say my vows. Can you promise me that? Abby, you're scaring me. What's going on? Just promise me, please. I promise. But talk to me. What's happening? You'll understand soon. Just keep Mom and Brent away from each other before the ceremony, okay? Don't let them have a private moment. I made the same call to Tyler. He was confused, but he agreed to keep Brent busy and away from my family before the ceremony. By 10 a.m., I was at the salon getting my hair and makeup done, acting like nothing had happened, smiling at the right moments, laughing at the stylist's jokes, pretending to be the happy bride everyone expected to see. But inside, I was calculating, planning, preparing for the moment when I would stand at that altar and deliver the performance of my lifetime. Because in 6 hours, my mother and Brent were going to learn what happens when you betray someone who trusted you completely. They were going to discover that sometimes the quiet ones are the most dangerous when pushed too far. And our entire town was going to witness the moment when their perfect little secret became the most public humiliation of their lives. The show, as they say, was about to begin. The morning of my wedding, I woke up feeling strangely calm. You'd think after discovering your fiancé and mother together, you'd be a wreck. But I felt focused, clear, like I was about to perform the most important role of my life. I got ready at Ashley's house, just like we'd planned. Hair in an elegant updo, makeup flawless, the same radiant smile I'd practiced in the mirror 1,000 times. Every person who saw me that morning said the same thing. You look absolutely glowing, Abby. If only they knew why. Ashley kept asking if I was okay. You seem different today, she said while helping me into my dress. Are you nervous? Not at all, I told her, and I meant it. I've never been more ready for anything in my life. The ceremony was set for 2 p.m. at St. Mary's Church, the same church where I'd been baptized, confirmed, and had dreamed of getting married since I was a little girl. By 1:30, the pews were packed. 150 guests, all dressed in their Sunday best, all expecting to witness the perfect small-town wedding. David, my photographer, gave me a subtle thumbs up from the back of the church. The cameras were in position, the live stream was running. Everything was ready. I could see my mother in the front pew, wearing the navy blue dress we'd picked out together. She looked radiant, like she was glowing with some secret joy. Next to her sat Brent's parents, just like I'd requested. Behind them, Aunt Carol with her phone ready to record. At exactly 2 p.m. the music started. The traditional wedding march that had played at countless ceremonies in this very church. Ashley walked down the aisle first, beaming with pride for her best friend. Then it was my turn. I stood at the back of the church, my arm linked with Uncle Jim, who was walking me down the aisle since Dad wasn't in the picture. Everyone stood up and turned to look at me. I saw tears in people's eyes. I heard someone whisper, "She's so beautiful." And there, at the altar, stood Brent in his black tuxedo, looking more handsome than I'd ever seen him. For just a moment, my heart wavered. For just a second, I remembered why I'd fallen in love with him in the first place. But then I saw the way he glanced at my mother. That quick, guilty look that lasted maybe 2 seconds. And my resolve hardened like steel. I walked down that aisle with my head high, my smile perfect, my steps steady. I was every inch the radiant bride. When I reached the altar, Brent took my hands and whispered, "You look incredible." "Thank you," I whispered back. "So do you." Pastor Williams began the ceremony with the traditional words. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to witness the union of Abigail Martinez and Brent Coleman in holy matrimony." I went through all the motions perfectly. The prayers, the readings, the exchange of rings. Brent slipped the wedding band onto my finger, and I did the same for him. My hands were steady. My voice was calm. I was the picture of a happy bride. And then came the moment I'd been waiting for. The vows. "Abigail and Brent have chosen to write their own vows," Pastor Williams announced. "Brent, would you like to go first?" Brent pulled out a folded piece of paper and began reading. His voice was shaking with emotion as he talked about love, partnership, and forever. He promised to honor me, to cherish me, to be faithful to me for the rest of his life. "You are my everything, Abby," he said, his eyes glistening with tears. "I promise to love you and only you for the rest of my days." The congregation was eating it up. I could hear sniffles throughout the church. Even my mother was dabbing her eyes with a tissue. "Beautiful," Pastor Williams said. "Abigail, your vows." I reached into my bouquet where I'd hidden both sets of vows. For a moment I held both pieces of paper in my hands. The fake vows that would give everyone the fairy tale ending they expected. And the real vows that would burn everything to the ground. I looked at Brent, standing there so confident, so sure that he'd gotten away with it. I looked at my mother, beaming with pride in the front row. And I made my choice. "I actually want to speak from the heart," I said, tucking the fake vows back into my bouquet and holding up the real ones. "These words are too important to read from a script." Brent smiled, thinking I was being romantic. The congregation settled in, ready for heartfelt emotion. "Brent," I began, my voice carrying clearly through the church, "when I first met you 4 years ago, I thought I'd found my soulmate. I thought I'd found someone who would love me, honor me, and most importantly, respect me. So far so good." People were nodding, smiling. "I trusted you completely. I brought you into my family. I shared my deepest secrets with you. I believed every word you said." Brett was still smiling, but I could see a flicker of confusion in his eyes. "But last night at 1 a.m., I discovered who you really are." The smile disappeared from his face. A murmur rippled through the congregation. "Last night, I came home early from my bachelorette party with a migraine. I needed to pick up my phone charger from my mother's house. And when I got there, I saw something that will be burned into my memory forever." The church was dead silent now. You could hear a pin drop. "I saw you, Brent Coleman, kissing my mother. Not a friendly kiss. Not a congratulatory hug. I watched you put your hands on her face the way you used to touch mine. I watched my mother run her fingers through your hair like a lover. Gasps erupted throughout the church. Someone screamed. I kept going. I stood outside that window for 20 minutes, watching the two people I trusted most in the world betray me in the most intimate way possible. I watched my fiancé and my mother acting like teenagers in love, while I stood there in my wedding dress, less than 18 hours before our ceremony. Brent's face had gone completely white. He was shaking his head, trying to speak, but no words were coming out. So Brent, here are my real vows. I promise to never trust another word that comes out of your mouth. I promise to never forget what you've done to me. And I promise that everyone in this town will know exactly what kind of man you are. The church exploded. People were standing up, shouting, crying. Brent's mother was screaming, "Is this true? Brent, is this true?" I turned to look at my mother. She was sitting frozen in her pew, her face a mask of absolute horror. She looked like she was going to be sick. "And Mom," I said, my voice carrying over the chaos, "thank you for teaching me that blood doesn't always mean family. Thank you for showing me that some people are willing to destroy their own children for a moment of selfish pleasure." My mother finally found her voice. "Abby, please let me explain." "There's nothing to explain," I said. Everyone saw exactly what they needed to see. Brent finally started talking, stammering, trying to deny it. "Abby, this is crazy. I would never. Your mother and I never. This is insane." But his denials were drowned out by the chaos in the church. Brent's father had stood up and was shouting at him across the pews. "Tell me she's lying. Tell me you didn't do this." Ashley was crying, her hands over her mouth in shock. Tyler, the best man, was backing away from Brent like he was diseased. Aunt Carol was recording everything, just like I'd asked her to. David was capturing every moment from multiple angles. And through it all, I stood there calm as a lake on a windless day. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, my voice somehow cutting through the noise, "thank you for coming to witness the truth. The ceremony is over." I dropped my bouquet at Brent's feet, right there at the altar. I pulled off my engagement ring and my wedding band and handed them to Pastor Williams, who was standing there looking like he'd seen a ghost. "You can give these back to whoever wants them," I said. Then I walked. Not run. I walked. Down that aisle, past the shocked faces and open mouths, past the tears and the shouting, past the wreckage of everything I'd thought my life would be. Behind me, I could hear Brent calling my name. His voice desperate and broken. I could hear my mother sobbing. I could hear the general chaos of 150 people trying to process what they'd just witnessed. But I didn't turn around. I didn't look back. I walked out of that church the same way I'd walked in, with my head high and my dignity intact. The only difference was that now everyone knew the truth. The little girl who dreamed of the perfect fairy tale wedding was gone. In her place was a woman who'd learned that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to be a victim. And as I stepped into the afternoon sunlight, I realized something surprising. For the first time in months, I felt completely free. The weeks after the wedding were like watching dominoes fall in slow motion. One by one, everything that Brent and my mother had built came crashing down. Brent moved back in with his parents the very next day. Can you imagine? A 28-year-old man, slinking back to his childhood bedroom because his entire life had imploded in front of 150 people and a Facebook live stream that had been shared over 3,000 times. His construction company fired him within a week. Turns out, when you're the talk of a small town for all the wrong reasons, clients don't want you working on their homes. His dad had to publicly distance the family business from his own son, just to save their reputation. I heard through the grapevine that Brent tried to explain himself to his parents, tried to minimize what happened, but his mother, God bless her, looked him dead in the eye and said, "I raised you better than this. I don't know who you are anymore." The last I heard, he was planning to move 3 towns over, trying to start fresh where nobody knew his name. But here's the thing about small towns: word travels fast, and shame travels even faster. My mother's fall was even more spectacular. Within 2 weeks, she'd been asked to step down from her position at the bank. Her supervisor told her that her personal conduct was reflecting poorly on the institution. In a town where reputation is everything, she'd become radioactive. Sandra Martinez, the woman who used to be invited to every social gathering, every church event, every community function, became a ghost in her own hometown. Her friends stopped calling. Her coworkers avoided her. Even her own sister, Aunt Carol, refused to speak to her. I found out later that she'd tried to call me over 100 times in the first week after the wedding. She left voicemails crying, begging me to let her explain. She sent letters to my apartment, flowers to my classroom, even showed up at the school once before security escorted her off the property. But what could she possibly say? What explanation could justify sleeping with your daughter's fiancé? What words could repair the trust that had been shattered so completely? The truth is, I felt nothing when I heard about their downfall. No satisfaction, no revenge, no sense of justice served. Just emptiness. Like a part of me had died in that church and would never come back. My perspective on love changed completely. I used to believe that love was pure, that it was sacred, that it was worth fighting for. Now I understood that love could be weaponized, that it could be used to manipulate and betray. I used to think that family was everything, that blood was thicker than water. But I learned that sometimes the people who share your DNA are the ones most willing to destroy you for their own selfish desires. Trust became a foreign concept. If I couldn't trust my own mother, the woman who gave birth to me and raised me, how could I trust anyone? If I couldn't trust the man I was planning to spend my life with, how could I ever open my heart again? The hardest part wasn't the betrayal itself. It was the realization that I'd been living a lie for months, maybe years. How long had they been laughing at me behind my back? How many times had I sat at family dinners, completely oblivious to the fact that my fiancé was sleeping with my mother? Every memory became tainted. Every happy moment we'd shared as a family was now suspect. Had their relationship started during those long wedding planning sessions? Had they been together when I brought Brent home for Christmas? Had they been conducting their affair under my own roof? I'll never know the full truth, and maybe that's for the best. Some wounds are too deep to heal, and some betrayals are too fundamental to forgive. But here's what I learned from all of this. Sometimes the people closest to you are the ones who hurt you most. The ones who know exactly where to aim the knife for maximum damage. The ones who can smile to your face while stabbing you in the back. My mother knew that losing Brent would devastate me. She knew that losing her would destroy me. And she chose to risk both for whatever temporary pleasure she got from their affair. Brent knew that I worshipped my mother, that her approval meant everything to me. He knew that betraying me with her would be the ultimate violation. And he did it anyway. 6 months later, I'm still picking up the pieces. I'm in therapy, trying to learn how to trust again. I've moved to a new town, started fresh where nobody knows my story. I'm slowly rebuilding my life, one day at a time. Some days are better than others. Some days I wake up and forget for a moment that my old life is gone. But then reality hits, and I remember that the two people I loved most in the world chose each other over me. I don't know if I'll ever get married. I don't know if I'll ever have the kind of relationship with my mother that I used to dream about. I don't know if I'll ever be able to trust someone completely again. But I do know this. I'm stronger than I thought I was. I survived the worst betrayal imaginable, and I'm still standing. I didn't let them break me, even though they tried. And maybe that's enough for now. Maybe survival is its own kind of victory. To everyone who stayed with me through this entire story, thank you for listening. If my experience helps even one person recognize the warning signs of betrayal, or gives someone the courage to stand up for themselves, then maybe something good can come from all this pain. If you found this story as shocking as I did to live through it, please subscribe to this channel. I'll be sharing more stories about overcoming betrayal, rebuilding trust, and finding strength in the darkest moments of your life. And I have to ask, have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted completely? How did you handle it? Did you get revenge, or did you take the high road? Let me know in the comments, because I'm still trying to figure out if what I did was right or wrong. Sometimes the people closest to you are the ones who hurt you most. But sometimes, that pain is exactly what you need to discover who you really are underneath all the expectations and illusions. My name is Abby Millis, and this is my story of betrayal, revenge, and the long road to healing. Thank you for taking this journey with me.